Welcome to this class about educating exceptional children. You are all here because you are new teachers and you're excited to learn more about teaching. I am here to teach you about a special group of students that you will encounter on your teaching journey, exceptional children. So, what does the term exceptional children mean? Well, here's a definition by a man named Craig E. Heward, a prominent scholar in the field of special education. He said, exceptional children differ from the norm either above or below in physical attributes or learning abilities to such an extent that they need specialized educational services or physical accommodations to benefit fully from schooling. So when we say exceptional children, we are saying they are different, not deficient. Each student you will encounter is unique in their own special way. You will see a range of exceptional children in the grades pre-K through 12th grade. Some will require a lot of accommodations and others just a few. Here are the 13 categories of exceptionalities that were recognized by the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of 2004, or IDEA for short. And the 13 that are mentioned here are 1, autism, 2, deafness, 3, deaf-blindness, 4, emotional disturbance, 5, hearing impairment, 6, intellectual disability, 7, multiple disabilities, 8, arthropedic impediment, 9, other health impairments, 10, specific learning disabilities, 11, speech or language impairment, 12, traumatic brain injury, 13, visual impairment, including blindness. Now let's talk about the history of special education. For years, exceptional children were either kept out of the regular schools, educated in a special home, or at home by their family. As the years have passed, we have moved towards inclusion of exceptional children in the general education classrooms. Here, we look at some of the laws that have been passed to give exceptional children the services that they need. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act was passed in 1975 and took effect in 1977. And it's important for children with exceptionalities because it's designed to assure that all handicapped children have available to them a free, appropriate public education which emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs. This act established 6 key provisions: 0 rejection, non-discriminatory evaluations, individualized education program, least restrictive environment, due process, and parental participation. The next law is the Education of the Handicapped Act Amendments of 1986. And this was renamed the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA for short. This act improved the original legislation by advocating federal funds to states to develop supports for children and families from birth and not just school-age children. This is so important because early intervention is critical for success of children with exceptionalities. And the third law is Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA, of 2004. And this was the reauthorization of the original legislation, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. This piece of legislation added 3 important additions: quality of personnel, IEP standards, and transitional planning. The quality of personnel was assured by the laws requiring special education teachers to hold full state certifications. The IEP standards are individualized educational program for children with exceptionalities so that each child has a plan created just for them to succeed. Transition planning is a is required to help children with exceptionalities develop a plan for their future to enable them to live as fulfilled of a life as independently as possible. Now let's look at some laws that have been passed to protect the rights of exceptional children to an education regardless of their exceptionality. First, we have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, of 2004. It was the reauthorization of the original legislation, Education for All Handicapped Children Act. This reauthorization was just an update done to keep the laws up to date and relevant. The next one we'll look at is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. This legislation makes it illegal to deny participation in programs or activities solely on the basis of a disability. And this is or individuals with disabilities must have equal access to programs and services as everyone else, is basically what that law is saying. The next law we're going to look at is the Americans with Disability Act of 1992. It was an extended civil rights to persons with disabilities. So this was an add-on to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which protects the rights of all individuals, regardless of race, color, national origin, gender, or religion. The first law that was mentioned here is a special education law. The other two are civil rights laws. Schools are required to give all children an education accessible to them. In order to assure that exceptional children also get an education accessible to them, the law requires that a special individualized plan be created to be sure this is accomplished. So here are two examples of the specialized educational plan. We have the individual educational plan and the 504 plan. They are used to document the strengths and the needs of children with exceptionalities and to develop a plan that best supports and services each child. Both the individualized education programs, the IEP and the 504 plans, are plans, educational safeguards for students with exceptionalities and their families. Even though these plans are similar, they have some differences. They differ in the original laws that they came from. The IEP came from IDEA, the special education law. The 504 plan comes from the Rehabilitation Act, Section 504, a civil rights law. The requirements for who is eligible for IEPs are more specific, whereas the 504 has a broader definition of disability. So how do we know if a child is an exceptional child under these laws? Here are the steps in the identification process for exceptional children. It is a careful process that takes quite a bit of time. A team of people are involved in this process that would include parents, general education teachers, special education teachers, school counselors, medical providers, and are some of this team involved in identifying these children and creating an individualized plan for them. So here are the steps. 1, the child is identified. 2, the child is evaluated. 3, eligibility is decided. 4, the child is found eligible for services. 5, an IEP meeting is scheduled. 6, the IEP meeting is held and the IEP is written. 7, services are provided. 8, progress is measured and reported to parents. 9, the IEP is reviewed. 10, the child is re-evaluated. One support that can also be helpful for children with exceptionality is assistive technologies. They are designed to help children with their special needs our children with special needs to be able to access information that otherwise they would not be able to. These devices are categorized into groups of low tech, mid tech, and high tech. And here we have some examples. So under low tech, some examples would be pencil grips, standing frames, or picture boards. Some middle tech examples would be audiobooks, word processing computers, and sound recorders. Some high tech examples are speech recognition software, electronic communication devices, and mobility technologies for guiding electronic wheelchairs. Another support that's often used for exceptional children is speech and language therapy. Different children with exceptionalities sometimes need some support in this area. A speech language pathologist provides support for children who have different speech disorders. Being able to have speech therapy at an early age is important for the best chance of success for students with a speech disorder. Many times the one-on-one relationship with a speech therapist is very important to these students as well. The therapist is sometimes the only one who fully listens to them, giving them a feeling of worth. And this can really affect their personal life, their emotional and social aspect. All right, let's look at some social factors. The culture's view and response to children with exceptionalities deeply impacts students. As a whole, our society is moving toward respect and inclusion for all exceptional children. This impacts their life in a positive way, giving them a place in our communities. Also, for example, strong cultures can form within groups of individuals with exceptionalities. Like, for example, children that are deaf can greatly benefit from being part of the deaf culture. They will grow immensely in their sign language vocabulary if they have a good deaf culture to be a part of. It also gives them a sense of belonging to be a part of a culture made up of people like themselves. And thirdly, family's involvement is very key in the child's well-being. The family knows them best and is a wonderful support. The family is also the best advocate for their own children with exceptionalities. Now, let's take a closer look into one exceptionality. The exceptionality that I've chosen to focus on is children and youth who are deaf or hard of hearing. And the reason I've chosen this exceptionality is that several people in our family, including myself, have a desire to learn American Sign Language. I think it would be a very useful language to know, and I want to be able to communicate with those who are deaf. And if I don't know sign language, I would not be able to do that. The key characteristics of children that are deaf is that they have a hearing impairment that keeps them from being able to process any information through their hearing. They cannot hear even with hearing aids or sounds being amplified. Children that are hard of hearing have an impairment of hearing that affects their educational performance in an adverse way. This loss of hearing may be permanent or fluctuating. Both the deaf and the hard of hearing require special education adaptations for them to be successful on their educational journey. Let's talk about some of the impacts on learning. Being deaf or hard of hearing impacts learning by limiting any audio input they receive. Audio communication is a huge part of instruction in school. With that missing, other ways of communication must be learned. Also, being deaf or hard of hearing limits their ability to understand the emotional context of conversations because they miss hearing the voice inflection. This leads to let's talk about some teaching challenges that you would encounter with children that are deaf or hard of hearing. A teaching challenge that would be huge when teaching the deaf or hard of hearing children would be communication. Speaking face to face is always best. For the deaf, of course, being able to use sign language when communicating with the deaf is very helpful. Another teaching challenge would be communicating knowledge that is received audibly, like sighs, someone clearing their throat, bells, or alarms. Another challenge would be teaching them how to read because they cannot hear the sound combinations that letters make when you put them together to form words. One helpful tool for teaching exceptional children is using the Universal Design for Learning. This method of teaching has been designed to be flexible to meet the different needs of all students. It provides multiple ways to present the information of the lesson, to engage with the lesson, and multiple ways to show what they have learned. Here are 3 strategies that I'm showing as an example. 1, highlighter problems. So if you would highlight keywords in color, this would help deaf children catch the important keywords in the lesson. It would also help diverse learners to better focus and access the key information. Number 2, a study buddy and note-taking supports. This would help diverse students by giving them the support of another person working with them, because 2 brains is better than 1. It would also help a deaf student to be paired with a hearing study buddy to be able to catch things that they would miss because they can't hear it. Number 3, vocabulary builders would be helpful to all diverse learners by giving them a better understanding of the materials being taught. It is so important to understand the words, and just understanding what the words mean can help them learn the lesson so much better. So, what can schools and teachers do better? I believe we need to do a better job to assure that all students, including exceptional children, have the tools that they need to be able to understand the information we are communicating. And here are 3 ways we can improve. 1, teachers can use assistive technologies to help their children have accessible information. There's so many different technologies that can be used, like voice to speech and picture boards, and just different ones that can be used. Also, number 2, schools should use technologies to make information accessible to all children, including deaf. So when there's a big school assembly, the words could be put up on a screen for students to read. There should be someone there who knows sign language to help those who are deaf to be able to hear the information. There's devices that can be worn by deaf children that would vibrate. They could feel when like alarms or bells go off. They would also be able to get that information in a different way that's accessible to them. Here are some resources, some real resources that I've found for you. For family support, the PACER Center, which improves educational opportunities and enhances the quality of life for children and young adults with disabilities and their families. It's just a great website for support and a place to find resources all on one page. A school-based support is, especially for the exceptionality that I'd chosen, those of the children that are deaf or hard of hearing, there's the Kansas School for the Deaf. It's an excellent school near Kansas City, and they have a lot of resources for those who are deaf and hard of hearing. For a community support organization, right here in our own town, we have 4 County Mental Health, which helps and gives support and services for many children with exceptionalities. All right, I'm going to end with a real story from my life that impacted me and my family. Several years ago, a couple of my children and I were on a nature hike with a group of homeschoolers. Each week on Thursdays, we would go for a hike at our state park. There are miles of trails in this park, and on this particular day that we met, we decided to meet at one of the long ones. We knew we wouldn't be able to hike the whole trail since we had everyone from teenagers clear down to babies being carried by their moms. One of the families that we were with that day had a boy who was deaf. He hiked ahead with the older children. He was around 10 or 11 or 12 years old. My oldest son was further up the trail, and he hiked with some of the older children as well. And so he saw him hike with him part of the way. At some point, us moms decided it was time for us to turn around and head back. We'd been hiking a half hour to an hour. And so I called my son and told him it was time to turn around, and I asked him to let the other ones know as well. And it was at this point that we realized we did not know where the boy who was deaf was. So I let my son know, or he let me know, and he and his friends started looking for the boy. No one knew if he was up ahead or if he had turned around and headed back. We couldn't call his name to find him because he couldn't hear us. Before long, we split up, and some of us went to the end of the trail and started hiking back towards the others. And before long, we were all really worried. His mom was in tears, and we finally called the park ranger. He called the sheriff, and just as the authorities were getting there, the deaf boy was found. This situation really, really brought into clear focus our lack of ability to communicate with the deaf. Even if we'd been the ones to find him, we wouldn't have been able to tell him that his mother was looking for him or that any of us were looking for him. We did not know sign language. We did not know how to communicate with him. And this really bothered my son and I, and it caused us to want to learn sign language to be able to communicate with the deaf and the hard of hearing. Who knows, who we will encounter next that would we would need to be able to communicate with, and we wouldn't be able to. So thankfully, he was found pretty quickly, and the situation turned out good, but it really did impact our lives. All right, well, that is the end. We are to the end. I hope that you have learned something new, and go and be great teachers. And remember that you make a big impact in the lives of all your students, especially those of the exceptional children.